Empires once ruled the world: Rome, Britain, Persia, and beyond. They conquered lands, enslaved people, and wrote their names in blood and marble. But the modern world has a different kind of empire. One that doesn't need kings or crowns. One that rules not through fear, but through belief, culture, and money. This is the story of how the United States of America became the greatest empire the world has ever known. It's not just a story of armies and wars. It's a story of ideas, freedom, ambition, innovation, and the contradictions that lie beneath them. This is the rise of an empire, how America took over the world. In the late 18th century, 13 colonies on the edge of a vast continent rose up against one of the most powerful empires in history, Britain. They were farmers, merchants, philosophers, men who believed that liberty was not a gift from kings, but a right from nature. Out of rebellion came revolution. Out of revolution, a new idea was born: the United States of America. The Founding Fathers declared that all men are created equal, yet they built their new republic on a foundation of inequality. Slavery persisted. Native peoples were displaced. The dream of freedom was never meant for everyone. But the power of the idea, liberty, was unstoppable. It spread across the continent, carried by settlers, soldiers, and ambition. America's first war wasn't just for independence. It was for identity. Could a nation born in rebellion survive without falling into tyranny? In the years that followed, the young republic faced tests: internal divisions, foreign threats, and the endless question: what does it mean to be American? George Washington warned against entangling alliances. He believed America should stay apart from the world's chaos. But destiny had other plans. The American continent was vast, untamed, rich in resources, and inhabited by ancient nations long before Europeans arrived. As settlers moved westward, they carried not just rifles and plows, but a belief that God had chosen America to rule from ocean to ocean. They called it manifest destiny. And with that belief came conquest of land, of people, of nature itself. By the early 1800s, America had doubled in size through deals and wars: the Louisiana Purchase, the war with Mexico, the annexation of Texas. The empire was already forming, long before the world recognized it. But every empire begins with a story, and America's story was one of divine purpose. The land was destiny, the frontier, its proving ground. And as the 19th century dawned, the young nation was ready to rise, not just across the continent, but across the world that lie beneath them. This is the rise of an empire, how America took over the world. By the mid-1800s, America was no longer a fragile republic. It was a rising power with unstoppable hunger. A hunger for land, for gold, for destiny. The phrase manifest destiny was born. The belief that the United States was chosen by divine will to spread civilization across the continent. To Americans, the frontier was not just geography. It was a mission. But every mission has its price. Segment: the westward push. The West was a promise of land, wealth, and freedom. The Homestead Act of 1862 opened millions of acres to settlers. Railroads cut across wilderness. Cities rose from the dust. But this expansion came at the cost of those who had lived there for centuries. Native tribes were pushed aside, betrayed, or destroyed. Entire cultures vanished beneath the march of progress. It was empire building in all but name. Segment: Civil War and Rebirth. As the nation expanded, it was torn apart from slavery. The Civil War, America's bloodiest conflict, decided not just who ruled the nation, but what the nation stood for. When the war ended, the United States emerged scarred, but stronger. The Union survived, and from its ashes, a new kind of power began to rise. The war had changed everything. America was now united, industrially, politically, and ideologically. Railroads, steel, oil, the engines of empire roared to life. By the late 19th century, the United States was no longer just a nation. It was a machine, and machines don't stop. They expand. The frontier was gone. The continent was conquered. But the American spirit of expansion, that restless energy, needed new frontiers. And soon, the eyes of America turned outward, toward the oceans, toward the world. The year was 1898. The United States, once a colony itself, had become an empire. The spark was a single event, the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor. The Spanish-American War began, and ended in just 4 months. When it was over, Spain's empire was gone, and America's had begun. America took control of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. It built the Panama Canal, a steel artery connecting the oceans. The United States was no longer confined by its borders. It was a global power, projecting influence thousands of miles from home. And for the first time, American ideals, liberty, democracy, capitalism, began to travel with its armies. The empire wore no crown. Its weapon was trade. Its language was opportunity. Its banner, freedom. But freedom under empire always comes with a shadow. In the Philippines, thousands died resisting American rule. In Central America, American corporations controlled entire nations. And yet, the dream of the land of the free continued to inspire the world. By the dawn of the 20th century, America was booming. Electricity lit its cities. Cars filled its streets. Men like Rockefeller, Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan controlled vast empires of oil, steel, and finance. They were the new monarchs, the kings of capitalism, and their empires were far more enduring than any dynasty. The world watched in awe and fear, for America was no longer just a country. It was becoming a force, and when the 20th century arrived, that force would soon reshape the entire planet. In Europe, new powers were rising. Germany, Russia, Britain. The old world was preparing for war, and America, though still young, would soon be called upon to decide the fate of the modern age. In 1914, the world went mad. Empires old and new clashed in a war unlike anything seen before. Europe, once the center of civilization, tore itself apart in trenches and fire. At first, America watched from afar. President Woodrow Wilson promised neutrality, but neutrality is a fragile dream. By 1917, the United States entered the Great War. Millions of American soldiers crossed the Atlantic, young, untested, full of idealism. They came not as conquerors, but as crusaders, to make the world safe for democracy. And when the guns finally fell silent in 1918, America stood taller than ever before. Europe was shattered. Its empires, British, French, Russian, Ottoman, were broken or bleeding. But across the Atlantic, a new power had emerged untouched by ruin. The balance of the world had shifted. America had arrived. The 1920s were an age of excess. Jazz, cars, skyscrapers, and money. America was the new symbol of modernity. But beneath the glitter lay fragility. In 1929, the market crashed. Factories closed, breadlines grew, hope vanished. The empire of wealth had cracked before it could even solidify. As America struggled, across the ocean, darkness rose again. Fascism, Nazism, Imperial Japan. The world spiraled into another, even greater war. This time, the United States could not stay away. America became the arsenal of democracy. Its factories produced more tanks, planes, and ships than all enemies combined. Soldiers fought across Europe and the Pacific. Science unleashed the power of the atom. And when the war ended, two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, burned beneath the light of a new, terrible sun. The Second World War destroyed the old world order. But from the ashes, two superpowers rose, the Soviet Union and the United States. And for the next half-century, the world would live in their shadow.
The year is 1945. The war is over, but peace has not arrived. A new kind of conflict begins, not fought with bullets and bombs, but with ideas, spies, and fear. The Cold War. For the first time in history, humanity held the power to end itself. The nuclear bomb became both sword and shield. The arms race began. Missiles, silos, submarines, each capable of annihilation. Children practiced hiding under desks. Politicians preached strength. The world waited for the unthinkable. Beyond the headlines, a hidden empire grew. The CIA, born from the ashes of World War II, became America's invisible hand. From Latin America to the Middle East, from Asia to Africa, the agency shaped governments, toppled leaders, and guarded American interests. Sometimes for freedom, sometimes for control. Every empire claims to bring order, but order built on secrets always comes at a cost. Yet America's greatest weapon wasn't its army. It was its culture. Music, movies, and television carried the American dream into every home on Earth. While the Soviets built walls, America built images of freedom, of abundance, of individuality. From jeans to jazz, from Coca-Cola to the moon landing, the world didn't just see America. It wanted America. The Cold War wasn't only about power. It was about progress. The space race turned science into spectacle. Kennedy promised the moon, and America delivered. Computers, satellites, microchips, a technological empire was rising, built on innovation and competition. But even as it looked toward the stars, America's shadow grew darker on Earth. In the jungles of Vietnam, America faced its greatest test. The world's strongest military could not defeat a smaller, poorer nation driven by ideology and will. Helicopters burned. Cities fell. At home, protests filled the streets. For the first time, Americans questioned their empire. Yet even defeat could not end the empire. For empires, like myths, adapt. And when the Soviet Union began to crumble, America stood alone. In 1991, the hammer and sickle fell for the last time. The Soviet Union was gone. And for the first time in history, one nation, one idea, ruled without rival. The American empire had reached its zenith. But every empire that rises must face the same question. How long can it last? The 20th century ended not with war, but with connection.
The Cold War was over, and the world had entered a new age, the digital age. America, victorious and confident, led the way. From Silicon Valley's garages came empires greater than any army could build. Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. These were not just companies. They were new nations, invisible ones, ruling through data, influence, and information. The Internet began as a military network, a tool of defense. But in the hands of the public, it became something else entirely. A global web of ideas, commerce, and control. For the first time in history, the American dream could be uploaded, streamed, and shared. Instantly, everywhere. Culture was no longer exported by ships or soldiers. It spread through screens, Hollywood, Silicon Valley, Wall Street. One shaped imagination, one built technology, one controlled capital. Together, they forged the digital empire, a realm where influence replaced invasion, and algorithms replaced armies. The power of America now lived in symbols, a logo, a song, a trend. Every like, every click, every purchase became a tribute to its empire. The United States no longer needed to conquer. The world willingly joined its network. But with power comes consequence. The digital empire also brought division, misinformation, addiction, surveillance. In chasing connection, humanity became watched. America had given the world its most powerful invention and its most dangerous mirror. The 21st century began with smoke and fear. September 11th, 2001, a day that changed the course of history. The towers fell, and with them, America's illusion of invulnerability. The empire struck back, in Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond. But in chasing enemies abroad, it began to lose itself at home. The War on Terror became the longest conflict in American history. Trillions spent, thousands lost. And yet, victory was never clear. The world watched, not an empire of justice, but an empire of exhaustion. At home, the divisions deepened. Politics became a battlefield. Truth itself became a weapon. The same tools that made America powerful, social media, television, technology, began to tear at its fabric. The empire of ideas was now fighting for its soul. Meanwhile, new powers rose. China, India, the European Union, nations shaped by America's influence, yet determined to challenge it. The 21st century is no longer America's alone. And yet, even as power shifts, culture still speaks with an American accent. English remains the language of business and the internet. Hollywood remains the dream factory. The dollar remains the world's currency. And the American experiment, the idea that anyone, anywhere can rise, still burns bright in the imagination of billions. Empires fall. They always have. But America is different. Not because it will last forever, but because it changed what empire means. Its borders are not just lines on maps. They are ideas in minds. Freedom, innovation, dream. These are not the tools of tyranny. They are the weapons of belief. And perhaps that is the true legacy of the American empire. Not domination, but imagination. The power to dream, to build, to rise, again and again. The story of America is the story of humanity's most ambitious experiment. One still unfinished, one still unfolding. Empires rise and empires fall. But history remains. Every story, every victory, every mistake. Each one a lesson written in time. Because those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. This is not the end of the story. It's only the next chapter. Thank you for watching. Every view, every comment, every new subscriber means the world to me. This channel exists because of people like you, curious minds who still believe that history matters. Together, we can keep the past alive and bring forgotten stories back to light. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to subscribe. Your support helps Scroll of Time grow and brings us one step closer to our first 1,000 subscribers. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being part of this journey through time.